Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. Welcome to our Exemplary Catholic Leaders series. Today, my special guest is Ian Navarro. He is the founder of Libertas Counseling. And so that's a very interesting topic, I think, for our audience today. Ivan, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. Let's talk right away about the first important question always is, what is your faith journey? Where did you come from in the faith? How do you practice the faith now? And what's your story about the Catholic faith?
Certainly. Yes. Yes, sir. Well, I want to start out by saying where I am today, and then right after that, I'll be happy to share how I got here. Where I am today, actually, it's where I believe I have been in my faith for the last 2 decades, or at least the last 15 years, and that is I have been actively seeking uh, to grow in holiness, actively seeking what we know as sanctification. And this is just part of me trying to observe something that was very evident in the Second Vatican Council, and that is the universal calling or the universal vocation to holiness that every single human being has, as the Council really put very well. And so I think it's really important, Henry, right now to review what it means to be a saint, because I think that's something that gets you know misunderstood, or simply people forget what it is. Very simple for me, at least, and from what I learned from the faith, being a saint is reaching union with God in this life, being in union with God, which in turn means always desiring and doing what God desires, kind of like your will being aligned with God's will. And it's important to remember, as Second Vatican Council says, that we're all born to be in this union with God, that we are all born to be saints, and therefore that is the fulfillment of our existence. Not being a saint is living an unfulfilled life. It's not being who you were born to be. I remember my one of my
Yeah.
philosophy professors quoted, I believe it was Blaise Pascal, who said that the biggest tragedy in life is to not be a saint. And so that's really where I've been, where I am today, is continuing to fight, to seek constantly how I can grow in holiness and attain sanctification. But so let me tell you how I got here. I am a
Yes, please.
cradle, yeah, I am a cradle Catholic, like most Latin Americans. As you guys probably can tell by my accent, I was born and raised in Latin America up until the age of 14, when I moved here to Southeast Texas, to the Houston area in Texas, and and therefore, like most Catholic, most Hispanics, I am Catholic, and I was baptized Catholic since I was a baby, so I am a cradle Catholic. And the interesting thing about my life in Colombia, though, was that I was also like most people down there, and that is, by the way, originally where I'm from, is from the Republic of Colombia. And most people down there, at least when I was born in the 1980s and growing up in the 90s, were cradle Catholics, but mainly nominally and culturally Catholic, not really Catholic by conviction. And that was also the reality of my grandparents, most of my grandparents, except maybe my maternal grandma and my parents. We were not really convinced Catholics. We were just Catholics by culture. And that meant that faith was not the center of our lives in Colombia. That was where I started. Being raised by these parents who really didn't go to mass every Sunday. It gave me the option to choose any other religion that I wanted if I wanted. Thankfully, I stayed. I'm happy that I chose the Catholic faith. And
Yes.
in that way, growing up, I did stand out from my peers, in that I feel like, despite the big presence of what we can call Catholic Catholic faith without conviction, I sought out the faith as best as I could, and I was happy to have done my first communion and to have remained a Catholic. And then things changed for us as a family and for me as an individual when, due to the civil war that was happening in Colombia during the 1990s, we had to move to Texas. So we were directly threatened by the terrorist groups, and we had to leave the country. We didn't want to. I didn't want to leave the country. I was very happy with my life down there. I am originally from the capital city, and I pretty much, by the age of 14, already had a very, very strong social life and dreams that I wanted to accomplish down there. So it was very heartbreaking, sorry, for our family to have moved here, and we all found consolation in the faith. My dad, my mom, and my only sibling. We all have found consolation in going to mass every Sunday, in reading the Bible, in growing up in our faith, because we had this void, this sadness that we had to leave our beloved country and our beloved culture. And so that was the beginning of my faith growth. I have to say that was the beginning of me becoming a Catholic by conviction, becoming a really practicing Catholic, a practicing Catholic. What I have to also highlight real quick, Henry, is the Catholic faith in the United States helped me a lot personally. It's very unique. I don't know if those of you that are born here in America and are Catholics, realize the treasure that you have here. As you know, from the border, from the southern border, all the way down to Argentina, we have been Catholic countries for centuries, and we take that for granted. We really do. We have taken that for granted in Latin America. I feel like here in the United States, most Catholics don't take the faith for granted, and seeing the the Catholic Church here is just one more group in the middle of so many others, and yet the people that go to church here every Sunday were so strong. Were such strong Catholic that helped me as a teenager after I moved here to the United States. So that was a strong witness to me that I helped me to embrace my faith more. And so in high school, I was uh, practicing my faith more faithfully, going to preparation for confirmation more faithfully. And then I was blessed to have gone to the University of St. Thomas in Houston, which is a Catholic university with theology courses and philosophy courses. That also played a big role in continuing my faith growth. Seeing again peers that love the faith and wanted to, live out the faith, inspired me to do that myself. And the one thing that the University of St. Thomas did for me that was very helpful was that they got me thinking about my vocation. What was my true vocation? I went into that college with my own selfish ideas of wanting to be a famous Spanish reporter in the Hispanic media. So I studied communications there, completed that degree. But at the time I completed it, I was wondering what I was going to do. What was God really calling me to do? And I was able to discern that in that moment the best thing for me was to enter the religious life and to try to become a priest. So as soon as I completed my communications degree, I joined a religious congregation that is present here in Houston. And I was at that moment thinking that was what God was calling me to do. What's interesting about that experience, Henry, that having been in a religious order, having been a member of a religious community, was that pretty much I entered that hoping and with a strong conviction that I wanted to do what God's will. That I just wanted to do what God intended for me and had intended for me in my life. And I'll just make the story short, really. In the religious life, I was there for several years, and it ended up leading me to the woman and to the job that I was born for. I ended up figuring out and discerning that I was really called to marriage, and that I was also called to be a mental health counselor, as a lay person. And so that's really what that was so helpful about the religious life. I mean, again, I started discerning God's will. At one moment, I stopped, and therefore, I was not really paying attention to what God was calling me to do. Otherwise, I think I would have left the religious life earlier. But thankfully, right before taking perpetual vows, before making any lifetime commitment with the congregation, even though it had already been years because we had delayed those vows,
Yeah.
I was
Sure.
able to see that my calling was to be a married man and a counselor. And then lastly, so the last 8 years since I left the religious life has been like the last stage of my faith journey where I am right now, which has been the stage of embracing my true vocation as a husband and a dad, and also as a mental health counselor, and then living it out. And it's I've been married for about 7 years, and I've been also a counselor around for the same time for 8 years or so. And it's been the stage of living out my vocation, growing in my vocation, and it has led me to a point, like I said, I am seeking to be holy. Now, I also happen to have the beautiful vocation of helping my wife and my children to reach holiness. That's something that everybody who's a dad and a husband need to remember. When we die, when we face the Lord in the last judgments, we're going to be asked about the state of our souls and the state of the souls of our wives and kids. And so I am working on that, trying to just help my family to grow in holiness. But, Harry, from my whole experience in my faith journey, I have come to a point where my number one identity, what I know I am first and foremost, is a Catholic and a married husband, I mean, a married dad, and a counselor. So my faith and my vocation, my primary identity. I know I am Hispanic. I know I am Colombian. I am also an American citizen now, a counselor. But for me, being a Catholic and being in the marriage vocation, that's the number one thing for me in my identity. And my faith has contributed so much to that. So there, I put almost 40 years of life
Yeah.
into a hopefully 5 minutes
To
or
a few
less.
moments. Yes. Well, the beauty of what you've just said is there's a set of steps that you took. I mean, I sense a deliberateness and a logical ordering here. And so let's talk then, Ivan, about you're a mental health counselor. Therefore, people come to you with all sorts of troubles and challenges, and you are trying to help them. So let's talk briefly then about what type of counseling is that? What do people come to you about and for? Because in the Catholic faith, we sometimes say that the area of psychology or psychiatry is a secular pursuit rather than a Catholic pursuit. And so I'm interested in to know whether and how you bring the Catholic faith into the work that you do. What kind of problems do people come to you about, and how do you bring the faith into it?
Certainly. So, I mean, the main reason why people come to me is because they realize, as this secular culture promotes a lot, that you need to be taking care of your mental health. The people that come to me do so because they realize that they're not doing well with their mental health, and they're mainly seeking to obtain professional help to do better with their mental health through the assistance of a professional like me. In my experience, Henry, I have had the pleasure of approaching this career in two ways. I began as a counselor who was mainly working. Let me just put it this way. I just said a minute ago that my number one identity, my first and foremost um, identity is being a Catholic. So I
Yes.
approached this career as being a Catholic counselor who was only going to help Catholics. And there are many private practices and non-profits that focus on that, and I was part of one of those. And yeah, I thought it made sense. It was reasonable to only focus on a Catholic population. However, now where I am today is I am open to helping anybody, and I have discovered that I can still continue to be a Catholic counselor and
Yes.
continue to help people no matter what their backgrounds are, no matter if they're Catholics or not. My goal is what I was just saying also just a moment ago, is to help people to improve their mental health. And that is ultimately why people come to me, hoping that I'm able to provide them with services that are best for them, whether I'm Catholic or not. But here is the interesting
Yeah.
thing: the Catholic faith contributes to me being a better counselor. it helps me to be a better counselor in so many ways, and I could break that down maybe later or in a little bit more. But I do have to throw that out there. It does help me. So also to answer some of the other questions that you were asking. Well, actually, you did ask one question like that, Harry. You said, how does a Catholic counselor integrate the faith and this type of work? And so, yeah, I mean, I can go ahead and say right now, how does the Catholic faith make me a better counselor, and how does my faith contribute to it? Well, first of all, I I am very mindful, very aware that people have mental health problems that many times are connected with their spiritual life, whether they're practicing a spirituality or not. And so that is something that my faith helps me a lot to do, is to acknowledge that in the end, everybody has a spiritual life, a soul, and that needs to be taken into account. But the other thing that is very helpful in this career, being a Catholic, is to follow church teachings. Henry, the church has been right about everything that it has taught for centuries about the human,
Yes.
regarding the human person. So really helping church, helping people by following church teachings gives Catholic counselors such a strong support in doing our job,
Yeah.
hopefully better than non-Catholic counselors, precisely because of this long tradition of understanding the human person, knowing what is best for the human person and recommending it. And to give you some concrete examples, Henry, yeah, I can be really concrete about this. We, for example, those of us who are practicing Catholics and counselors, we would never recommend, let's say, pregnant women who are struggling with their pregnancy to have an abortion. As simple and straightforward as that. We follow church
Of course.
teaching, and we know it's best. And there are many studies. There is research that shows that abortion causes mental illness. That abortion is connected with disrupting the good psychological health of a woman and even people around them, around the
Yes.
woman that might could have abortions. So as simple as that, but just anything else that you can think of. We don't recommend euthanasia. Obviously, we don't recommend anything that goes against the teachings of the Catholic faith. And it turns out that in the end, it helps people to improve their mental health in a very beautiful and fulfilling way. And that's what's great about it. Now, don't get me wrong. I do stay away from being a spiritual director. I do stay away from, trying to act like a priest preaching to pagans or preaching to labs Catholics or any type of Catholic. I never fall into that because again, I remain very aware of what people do come to me for in the first place, which is their mental health. I don't have to mention the church teachings. I just follow them by the way in the way that I practice my therapy, and then people benefit from that without me necessarily having to talk about what the church is exactly teaching. No, I do offer counseling like everybody else. I offer cognitive behavioral therapy. I offer what most therapists offer, but again, the difference is that I am guided and I follow my limits are what the church tells me to be the limits. And again, it has turned out really well.
Yes, this is an important point you're making, Ivan, because I can think of an example at the Catholic CEO. We have clients, and by the way, we do have mental health counselors as clients too. In the
Nice,
Catholic, we're helping them to grow their businesses and to improve their leadership and so on. But
of
the
course.
point I was going to think about it is that we at the Catholic CEO, we use the Catholic teachings as well in the pursuit of virtue, but we also teach people how to be better business people to be more
Yes,
successful to providing income for their families, jobs for people, the honorable kind of dignity of work, and so on and so on. So we try to use, but we're not teaching people about the Catholic faith exactly. We're using the faith and we're helping them to secure virtue. So I can see the direction that you're heading in this way.
yes.
So talk then, what happens when somebody comes to you? They come to you. Obviously, there must be a series of discussions and sessions that you hold with people. Um, you know, it's not. I'm not I'm trying to be unfair to you, but what do people gain from sessions with you? Do they go away with, you know, improved mental health? I guess that's a simple answer, but what happens to people when they go through your process? You use cognitive therapies. You also have that Catholic connection. What happens to people when they come through your process?
Certainly, yes. What happens is that they are challenged. They are invited to work harder towards being, what I always say, better versions of themselves. A lot of people talk about being your best version of yourself, but you got to do that one step at a time. And the way you do that is by getting slowly better and better. And it does take somebody helping them, guiding them, challenging them to do so. And that's the role that I take, that I do. That's what happens to them. They do come to me again. To say it in other words, they are obviously struggling with a mental health condition that is preventing them from achieving what is best for them. A lot of times they don't even know what is best for them. Obviously, the church, it's like a light, in the midst of darkness that points the way to what is the right way to take. And people who are far away from the church because they're either because they're not Catholic or because they are Catholics who have abandoned their faith, they don't know what is even best for themselves. And I have to say, I mean, I've received freely and I freely give. Obviously, because my career does not require me to give that extra piece of knowledge that the faith does give me, uh, in helping them to figure out what is best for them. Really, my career, all it requires of me is to reduce symptoms of their conditions that they're struggling with, and that's it. And then also give them coping skills that so that they can manage
Wow.
these mental health difficulties without a counselor. The minimum goal in counseling is to help the client to be the best, not just the best version of themselves ultimately, but more immediately, it is a goal to help them to be a counselor to themselves, help them to be independent from counseling and thrive without a counselor. And the way you do that is by giving them the tools to do so. But again, what they get from me though, they get this extra push, extra
Yes.
information on how to really be convinced about what is best for them and then go after it. Go after it. A lot of the times, Henry, people struggle with depression. People struggle with clinical anxiety, and even they are
Yes.
held down sometimes by traumas because they have allowed themselves to reach that point, simply because they have lost sight of what a purposeful life, a goal worth pursuing. And so, not just me, Henry, but all Catholic counselors, we are called to put it simply, we are called to help our clients to pursue truth, goodness, and beauty, and
Yes.
to use in their immediate lives, and also the circumstances that they're in, to point out the direction for them, so that they follow that path, and they hopefully start seeing glimpses of it, allow themselves to be marveled by it, and then to continue to pursue it without a counseling anymore. So we do
Yes.
have this responsibility as Catholic counselors, and that's what they get from me, and that's what I
Hmm.
try to do with every single person that I help.
Yes. So, Ivan, it comes to mind that there is, we always hear this in our physical health, about the doctors and the medical system. Let's have a preventive approach. If I ask
Yes.
you, what is the preventive approach? What would you say to any typical family out there, any business person, any young student? What would you say to them to have, how do you have good mental health? What do you do
Yes.
to have good mental health?
You're asking a very interesting question that happens to have a really interesting answer. What makes the answer interesting is that the secular side of the psychology world, it has come up with something called positive psychology that I'm sure many of you have heard of, which is a new development in the psychological field. But what is interesting about it is that this positive psychology has rediscovered what the Gospels and the Catholic tradition has been preaching throughout the centuries. And this was an effort by one of the former presidents of the American Psychological Association, who realized that there was more need for the profession as a whole to be more preventive, and not so much only be focusing on fixing what's broken or healing what's already damaged, right?
Yes.
So, but again, when I began learning in counseling school in my master's program about positive psychology, having been a Catholic my whole life, I was hearing ideas and suggestions that I had learned in catechism as a child, and I was just
Mhm.
realizing, wow, Jesus was right. Jesus got it right. He said these things, and he inspired his disciples to preach these things that now, I mean, and these are things that obviously fall under the realm of reason, not necessarily in the realm of faith. And we were taught that these were the good things to do that were gonna lead you to grow in holiness precisely. So to give you some examples, positive psychology focuses a lot on generosity, and it has done research and has shown that being generous. And by the way, positive psychology did something interesting, which is it studied groups of people from across the world, from different cultures, and it picked out what all these groups had in common that was positive for preventing mental illness. And in their studies, they found that one of the things was this example of being generous, of giving. But and then look at what the teachings of Jesus are in the Gospels. He always said, "I did not come to serve, but sorry, I did not come to be served, but to serve." And the more you
Yes.
give, the more you receive. The first, those ones to be first, be last. Love thy neighbor. That's the ultimate generosity, and so it is no wonder that most saints, almost all the saints, except for those that were tested by God with mental illness, most saints had an impeccable psychology and mental health because they were the most generous in the history of humanity. And here is
Yes.
positive psychology pointing that out. Now, St. Paul was huge about telling us to be grateful, to give thanks all the time. This is what the word Eucharist means, to give thanks. That is another point that positive psychology says that we ought to do to prevent mental illness is to be really grateful. And as Catholics, as believers, we need to be first and foremost grateful to God. But then, out of love of neighbor, we need to be. Everybody should be grateful to anybody who's done good to you. So little things like that. Again, most of what positive psychology shows and teaches to prevent mental illness, it's and so those will be two really practical things that I recommend to everybody. These are things that are already found in the Catholic tradition,
Yes.
but now even the seculars, non-Catholics are discovering it as positive for psychology, and I recommend that to everybody. Be as generous as you can be. Think about others more than you think about yourself. I know this is a straight contradiction to the culture of self-care. Focus on taking care of yourself. The more you focus on you, the better your world will be. That's the complete opposite. It's no, focus on other people who have bigger needs than your needs. Focus on how you can be a good provider or a good helper to those around you, and you're gonna be preventing a lot of mental illness.
This
And
is
again, the more you give, the more you receive.
Yeah, it's so powerful as a message, and it's certainly something that I'm familiar with. We try to do that with our clients as well.
Right.
So, well, Yvonne, we've had so much. There's so much we could continue with, but our little
Yes.
short format is we're coming to the
Right.
natural end of our session together. Where do we find your work and support your work? What's your website? Do you have any events coming up? Do you have any publications that we should support? Because we want to direct our audience to support you as much as possible in the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Certainly, yes. So my website is Libertas, which is liberty in Latin. Libertas Services, one word, libertasservices.com. And the only publications that I have are in the form of video. I am publishing videos on YouTube, so you can find my YouTube channel is called Mental Health Healing and Help. It's almost a tongue twister because of so many H's, but that's it. Is Mental Health Healing and Help, and it is at Mental HHH. So I invite everybody to look for my videos if you are interested in growing psychologically, growing your mental health through the work of someone, a humble servant who tries to just follow the teachings of the church and also provide you with the best the career has to offer. Yeah, these videos are a great resource for everybody that I highly recommend. For people in the state of Texas and the state of Colorado, my business, my private practice is slowly growing to offer counseling that leads people to truth and is convinced that a close encounter with truth is actually what is best for mental healing, for mental health healing. And so anybody who's interested, yeah, we are happy to offer services to you. My goal is that, and that is another area where I'm trying to grow, not only in my faith, but also as a manager, as a business owner of a private practice. I want to be able to hire people who are interested in what you mentioned here, being preventative or helping people to find what is best for them, and have a team of counselors that do that. So this team is slowly growing, and so soon we'll be able to provide more of those services.
So it's a worthy objective. Well, Ivan, thanks so much for being with us.
Yes,
May God bless you, your family,
thank
and your
you.
practice, and all the you and thanks
All
again for
right.
being with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, and God bless you guys.
Thank you.